Welcome everyone to our physical activity launch event. We are so excited to be celebrating the reveal of our core set of digital measures of physical activity and resources to support their adoption in clinical care and research. My name is Candice Tikibau. I'm the program lead of this project and will be your guide throughout today's event. We do have a packed agenda today. I'll start by giving a very brief background of our project. We'll have some opening remarks, then move into some fireside chats and our rapid fire panel with some of our project team members, and then hopefully have some time in the end for audience Q&A. But first, some housekeeping. A reminder that this session is being recorded, and as always, our recordings are available on the DIME website afterwards. We also hope to have some time at the end for our live audience Q&A. So throughout our event today, if you have any questions, feel free to pop it in the chat and we'll make sure we get those answered. All right, a little bit about DIME. We are a global non-for-profit dedicated to advancing the ethical, effective, equitable, and safe use of digital medicine to redefine healthcare and improve lives. We sit at the intersection of healthcare and technology and work to advance the field by building a community of experts, organizing those experts into pre-competitive collaborations to conduct research and develop resources, and then re-engage that community through education and communication of those resources. Which brings us to this project. We are so proud of the work completed to define a core set of digital measures of physical activity with the fantastic organizations you see on this slide. And really the motivation of this project was born out of a recognition that first, physical activity is such an important indicator of health, often considered a sixth vital sign. We also recognized that there are limitations with current traditional in-clinic assessment of physical activity and opportunities for digital health technologies to capture physical activity in daily life and in contexts that are actually meaningful to patients. And so instead of continuing to reinvent the wheel and innovating in silos, DataCC by DIME gathered this multi-stakeholder group to define evidence-based digital measures of physical activity, ontologies for each measure, and resources to promote standardization and widespread adoption. It was also important to us that instead of jumping right into the technology, that we started by understanding what's meaningful to patients. And so following FDA's patient-focused drug development guidance, we started this work by conducting a systematic review of qualitative studies to identify meaningful aspects of health related to physical activity from the patient's perspective, and narrow down some measurable concepts of interest. We then conducted a modified Delphi exercise among physical activity and measurement experts to identify a list of physical activity outcomes, and then narrow down our core set even further based on measure readiness to be adopted in clinical care and research. Based on the research and evidence, we defined our core set of digital measures of physical activity, which are step count, number of walking bouts at specified bout durations, walking speed, measures of postural sway, and time spent in moderate to vigorous physical activity. We also developed some practical resources which outline step-by-step how you would adopt these measures as a clinical researcher interested in adopting measures of physical activity as endpoints in your clinical trials, as a care provider wanting to empower your patients to achieve their physical activity goals, or a technology developer focus on developing measures with the greatest potential clinical impact. And so we're so excited that these resources are now live, and we'll drop the link in the chat where you can view them. Again, we are so proud of this work and look forward to sharing it with the field. And with that, let me pass it over to one of our amazing project members, Dr. Alan Hamilton from the COPD Foundation, to give us some opening remarks and kick off our celebration today.
Thanks, Candice, for asking me to say a few words about the reasons behind my decision to contribute to the core measures of physical activity project. Next slide. So really, my focus today in my opening remarks is to give some insights into why I decided to join the project. And I'll be highlighting three specific aspects. One is my interest in the relationship between capacity and performance as it relates to physical activity. The idea of physical activity limitation being a common theme across chronic diseases. And finally, a little bit about my interest currently in the patient perspective, differentiating between what to measure and how to measure. And before I go into a little bit more detail on each of these, just to give a little bit of background of my own research journey. So I started off in my graduate studies with a focus on symptom limitation in physical activity and respiratory diseases. I then moved into a career in the pharmaceutical industry for 25 years as a clinical scientist, with my real research interest being exertional breathlessness and activity limitation in COPD. And for the last 2 years, I've been senior director of the COPD Foundation in the US, leading a project called Pivot, which is patient-inspired validation of outcome tools. And really, at the heart of my decision to contribute to this project was what I saw as a very strong alignment with my own research interest. And I'll give you a little bit more flavor of that in the coming slides. So just moving on to the next slide, Candace. So when thinking about capacity and performance, my early career was very much in the capacity domain, in-clinic laboratory assessments of functional capacity. But as my thinking evolved over time, I came to realize that there were other dimensions that were very relevant beyond just the functional capacity. And this slide from Nancy Leidy about 25 years ago really was a guiding light for me in showing the relationship between functional performance, so participation in daily activities, and functional capacity, which is the maximum potential to be able to perform activity in a standardized environment. And I think with the evolution of digital health technology, there's real opportunities now to do a much deeper dive into the measurement of functional performance during everyday life. So next slide. Then when it comes to the idea of physical activity limitation across chronic diseases, so when I joined the COPD Foundation, we were very interested in not just focusing on COPD as one respiratory disease, but we were looking at what are the opportunities to have a common themes that might be applicable across chronic lung diseases. We actually held an FDA patient listening session a couple of years ago called SOS for Breath. And our recommendation was actually to explore meaningful aspects of health that are impacted across chronic lung diseases. And so when I heard that DHTs was taking a omni-therapeutic approach to this project, that was very, very interesting to me and really built on the work that we were doing in the foundation in lung diseases. And so next slide. And then finally, and this is probably the most important slide for me, given the work that I'm doing with Pivot, which is very much focused on the patient-focused drug development guidances brought out and published by the FDA. And really a very important evolution in my thinking in terms of measurement technology or measurement has been this clear separation now between the concepts of what to measure and how to measure. And so very much a focus of the work that I do with Pivot is to really focus from the patient perspective is what are those meaningful aspects of health that they would feel matter most to them. And so I felt in talking to Candace when the project was first starting, I thought it was a very, very bold and innovative approach of DHTs, especially when dealing with digital technology, to not actually focus on the digital technology first, but take a step back and actually get a much better rigorous understanding of what it is we should be measuring in physical activity before actually then delving into how to measure it. So with those are really the salient points for me in terms of why I was so interested and have really been had a very satisfied experience in working with the project and with Candace and the team. And so it's a real pleasure for me to be able to speak to you today. So I'll hand back over to Candace now.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you so much for the contributions, your contributions to this project. They've been excellent. Now I'd like to invite Jen and our first Fireside chat speakers to discuss supporting patients with digital measures of physical activity. So Jen, over to you, and I'll stop sharing screen.
Fantastic. Alan, tremendous opening remarks. And I'm excited to dive in with some leading experts in two brief conversations. But I'd be remiss if I didn't start by first thanking all of the partners who trusted us with this work. Alan, I think you underscored the level of innovativeness that came with this project, the premium that we place on the science and the patients that we're all here to serve and not the technologies. I'm incredibly proud of that. So thank you to all of our partners. Thank you also, Candace, for your leadership, and Jake, Sam, Bethany, and Wendy for your hard work and support. This really is an exciting day for the field, and I'm excited to be here with all of you. So for folks I haven't had the privilege to meet yet, my name's Jen Goldsack. I'm the CEO here at the Digital Medicine Society, or DIME. And for our first Fireside chat, I'm delighted to be joined by Laurie Witzel from the Physical Activity Alliance and Bray Patrick Lake from the Digital Health Center of Excellence at FDA. And Laurie, I'm going to come to you first if I can. I'm going to ask you to briefly introduce yourself, but also to talk a little bit about your dedication to advancing the measurement of physical activity, and the possibility that you see associated with our ability to now measure this with such high resolution using sensor-based technologies.
Thanks, Jen. It's so great to be here, and so appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel today. I am Laurie Witzel. I'm National Vice President of Policy Research for the American Heart Association, and I also help lead the National Physical Activity Alliance, where we brought the physical activity community together before COVID to speak with one voice on national policy and systems change. And one of our major initiatives is It's Time to Move. It's our effort to get physical activity assessment, prescription, and referral integrated into patient care and healthcare delivery. And that's a big, bold effort, and certainly building on the work of so many others who have been in this space for the last couple of decades. And with the technology that is now with us, and also what we're going to see in the future, there's real opportunity here to create seamless solutions to help people on their journey toward health and well-being. So, one thing we heard with the Alliance as we started to get into this work, It's Time to Move is a multi-pronged, multi-year effort working with numerous government agencies. We heard from individual healthcare champions in their health systems that one of the first things they needed to do if they were going to make this happen in their clinical workflow is get standardized measures into their electronic health records. So we knew that we had to engage with HL7. And so over the last year and a half, we did that with funding and created standardized measures in an implementation guide that is now out for standardized use in the public domain. It's a big effort now to get that implementation guide integrated by health systems and electronic health records. We know that we're going to have to do policy change to inspire and incentivize that to happen. One of the first steps there was to work with the Office of the National Coordinator last year to get physical activity assessment integrated into version 4 of the U.S. core data for interoperability. So that means that in a couple of years, when version 4 becomes part of federal regulation, all EHR vendors will be required to have the capacity to assess for physical activity. So it's one thing to have it in the EHR. It's another thing to get it part of clinical and patient workflow. And that's going to take working with health systems. It's going to take professional education, and it's going to take digital health solutions that can be a seamless solution for patients if they need a little support on their journey toward health. So we're really excited about the progress we've made. We know that there's much more to do. I would like to mention, though, Jennifer, that there's more to this. Another really important piece is our national surveillance systems. Another reason why we engaged in HL7 is that during COVID, we knew that it would have been really valuable to have physical activity in all EHRs, because we would have been able to make the correlation between patients' physical activity levels and their health outcomes with COVID. Kaiser did that. They have been assessing for physical activity for a long time. So they were able to look at those data and publish a really important paper that showed that people with higher physical activity levels had better outcomes from COVID and lower hospitalizations. that influenced public health guidance by CDC. So that's really powerful. And it's an opportunity to make sure if we had it embedded as part of patient workflow, it would be really incredible in terms of supplementing our national surveillance systems and seeing the impact on health. And finally, these standardized measures are really critical, captured by digital health for research. It's becoming standard of practice to use digital health to assess for physical activity in research studies. We're almost approaching 100% in that. So for the purpose of patient workflow, for the purpose of national surveillance systems, and the purpose of research, getting to core measures for physical activity is just really critical in all the work that we're doing.
Laurie, well, I have to congratulate you on your hard work and tenacity. We know firsthand here at DIME how hard the process of standardization is, and that is only eclipsed by what it takes to actually drive broad adoption of these things. So I think tremendous leadership from PAA. And when we get to this data that you were able to share about the impact of physical activity on health and well-being, we know that we have to really harness the promise of these sensor-based technologies to be able to capture physical activity from every individual and not just from those people who can make it regularly into the clinic. And so with that, Ray, I want to pivot to topics that I know are near and dear to both of our hearts. We've actually published on some of this together. One of the things you and I talk about often, and I know are tenets at FDA, is physical activity is a sort of broad aspect of health. How do we actually think about using sensor technologies to measure those facets of physical activity that matter most? And in fact, given the resolution and the volume of data we can collect with sensors, if we're not measuring things that matter, we're just capturing noise, not signal. We're making things harder for ourselves. And more to the point, if we aren't capturing those elements of physical activities that matter to all members of the population, then actually we're not harnessing the promise of technologies to drive inclusion. We're doing quite the opposite. How do you think about this at FDA when you think about your responsibility to public health, when you think about driving and incentivizing the greatest ROI from digital technologies? What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I really think what you've hit upon, it's a health equity issue. We've got this proliferation of technologies, but without these standardizations and core measure sets, we're not going to be able to take full advantage. And so when you're thinking about our medical products safe and effective, we really need to have every person in a trial at all times, I think was the ultimate vision over the last 15 years that we've really been pushing for. And without digital technologies, that wasn't possible before. But now we see the true potential. But that really takes, this collaborative approach. And that's what we love about, Data CC and having the public and private sector come together with professional societies and patient groups in particular to make sure, we're doing this in a responsible way. But, you think about the ability to measure health outside the clinic and then potentially, identify people for trials, have people connected that could participate in trials that wouldn't have already, been invited to participate. One of my favorites, where we know how few people are actually being invited to participate. And then really understanding, changes over time as well. When you think about surveillance and if people, how they're doing on medical products, and safe and effective is one thing for, the trial itself and the medical product, but we really are looking at this broader as far as, the connected care in the home over time as well as an agency. And then I have to get a plug in from my personal experience as a patient in a trial that only measured things, that were survival. It was a cardiovascular trial. And it's really frustrating because I'm not dead. And so I'd like to know, how well am I going to live with this technology over time? And so really measuring, feel and function, and then somehow, getting that into the label and supporting that meaningful interaction between patients and their clinicians when they're making decisions about what products to use.
Bray, you touched upon two things that I think are critically important. First of all, your own experience in this notion that we can get much earlier signals and signals that matter to patients when we use these tools and technologies. And in fact, we actually have to take a lot of responsibility for making sure that happens. And then when I combine your remarks with what Laurie shared, really what both of your organizations are driving, and this is why we're so proud to partner with you, is the ecosystem and the infrastructure for us to really be able to use our digital exhaust, true patient-generated health data, whether that's in the EHR, whether it's from sensor technologies, in order to advance public health, include the way we care for patients, and develop new therapies, right? I think what's exciting about the use of patient-generated health data is it's not only, Bray, just like you said, finding those patients, but it's also generating new hypotheses because we see signals in the data. Laurie, you shared that information from Kaiser, which will help us think about new public health initiatives. This is the kind of future that we're driving towards as we think about these new flows of data. I want to thank you both for your participation in this work. Thank you for joining us today. And also look forward to continuing to drive all of this forward with both of you.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, thanks, Jen.
Tremendous. So as we thank Laurie and Bray for their efforts this morning, I'm also delighted to welcome my colleagues Yugay Zhao from the Michael J. Fox Foundation and Ankita Deshpande from Alexion for our second fireside chat. And I will ask them to introduce themselves as they give opening remarks. But Yugay, I'm actually going to come to you first. This is an exciting time for the work that we are doing at the intersection of Michael J. Fox Foundation's priorities and DIME. Not only did you guys come to the table for this work to identify and build core digital measures of physical activity, but actually we're partnering to expand the library that was created through this work to really highlight digital measurement products that are available and fit for prime time for Parkinson's more broadly. Tell us a little bit about the importance that you place on pre-competitive collaboration to be successful as we think about using technologies to have the greatest impact on patients.
Thanks so much, Jen. So excited to be here, and what an incredible resource. I was scrolling through the package, and it is blows my mind every time all the work that's been done into it. So congratulations to the team and everyone for pulling this all together in for a pretty short amount of time. I feel like it was just a little over a year and a half ago where it all just started. So very impressive. I'm Yugay Zhao from the Michael J. Fox Foundation. We're one of the largest global sponsors, funders of Parkinson's research. And one of the biggest objectives of the foundation is to really help look at different ways that we can help de-risk clinical development for Parkinson's therapeutics. And when I joined the foundation a little over 2 years ago, the way that we had approached digital clinical measures was, just funding kind of projects here and there. And really, when we took a step back and realized that it's through funding kind of consortia-based pre-competitive efforts like the one that DIME is leading, like groups like the Mobilized Initiative, for example, are leading. That is where the biggest impact and value is happening. Instead of each individual sponsor going out there and trying to develop tools or to find conduct qualitative research to understand what is meaningful to measure, being able to do this in a group effort pre-competitively, because when you think about what you should be competing on is really the drugs, not the measures, right? And so being able to put the focus on there is just hugely important. And we really shifted our funding focus to work and fund projects that are collaborative, that are pre-competitive, done in groups that bring the whole field, advance the whole field forward, and not just one group at a time trying to pave their way. We know this is an ever-evolving landscape, and so very much de-risking for everyone to pursue this pursue this work together. And I'm so excited, Jen, that you mentioned the collaboration that we we'll be working with DIME with to support around expanding the digital endpoints library. I feel like this is another amazing example of how resources that each individual drug sponsors might have to go out and pursue themselves to identify what measures and tools are out there to detect each of the concepts of interest that they are interested in. This resource will have in some way done that work for them and create a very consistent and also look into all the different aspects of what is important to a sponsor when you're looking for inclusion of a digital clinical tool in drug development trials. So what validation has been done, clinical validation, analytical validation, for focusing on all the different frameworks that you have created, and be able to have this tool for the field to use, so that instead of each group going forth and doing this work by themselves, we'll be able to do it together. So really excited that we'll be partnering with you, and know that you have done such incredible work through this project already. So thank you so much, Jen, and the DIME team, and Candace especially, for pulling all of this together.
Yige, thank you so much for your ongoing partnership, and you give such, I think, important and powerful voice to the importance of pre-competitive collaboration. And I think you hit on something that's really important, which is, what is it that we're here to compete on? And it's not what we're measuring. And you mentioned that, you know, for the purposes of developing new medical products, that's where sort of the differentiator is. And I want to be bold and sort of pile on a little bit there, because I want to sort of recognize the needs of our colleagues who actually develop sensor-generated technologies as their core business. They have to compete. And I still think this work we do to develop patient-centric core measures in the pre-competitive environment supports them. Because what we've done is build the evidence that supports what they decide to measure. So they no longer compete on what to measure, but they compete on the quality of their measurement, the way that they deliver data and user experience, and that's for the betterment of everyone. So I appreciate your remarks there. I appreciate your partnership, and I think this is really important.
100%, Jen. I mean, the voice of the patient belongs to the patient, right? And I think all of the work that is being done to understand what is meaningful to patients is incredible, as well as other people affected by the disease, whether that's our care partners or other members of their family. And I think that it's this is really where I think there can be a lot of reduction and redundancy that's being done across groups to understand what is meaningful to measure. And then once we are able to get this kind of core measure set, be able to then kind of narrow down within the specific drug development program or for a specific measurement tool, understand then what specific aspects of that concept is relevant to this population to then build on and further develop and refine the tools. And that's where I think, you know, additional pieces can come in. And when you think about adapting this core measure set to a fit for purpose tool within an indication, I think that's what I'm thinking about. But I think the groundwork to build all of this for should be pre-competitive and belongs to the patient, right? This is their voice that they are telling us what is important to them, and really should be centered and respected.
I couldn't agree more. And that's a perfect segue, Ankita, to you and your expertise. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself, but I'd also love for you to follow with some remarks that sort of reflect not only your expertise, but also Alexion's expertise in sort of caring for individuals with rare disease. And maybe share with us your thoughts on why this model that we built together, as Alan described, this sort of omni-therapeutic approach, these core measures that, as Yige said, we then take away and sort of tailor for the specific needs of a very specific patient population. Why is this so particularly important and powerful to individuals with rare disease?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everybody. My name is Ankita Deshpande, and I lead a digital health and experience innovation team within the rare disease business unit of AstraZeneca, the company formerly known as Alexion Pharmaceuticals. And our business unit, as the title would imply, focuses exclusively on rare disease patients. And digital measures have incredible promise for the rare disease patient population. So depending on sort of which source you look at, there's between 7,000 and 11,000 rare diseases that are known and identified today, of which approximately only 5% have treatments. So if you can imagine the amount of research that's ongoing to address the other 95%, that's thousands of individual diseases where there are no existing validated endpoints, where there are no proven precedents or pathways, where there's so few patients that doing a clinical trial with some of the more blunt instruments that work in large population diseases would prove impossible, because we can't find that number of patients to enroll in a study to be able to have an appropriate sample size. So where digital measures are incredibly valuable is because they enable us one, to be able to do more measure collection at home that enables us to capture a wider range of geographic opportunities for patients. And so we don't have to have patients traveling in or limit our sites and selections. The second is we get an incredible amount of signal from these digital tools that really amplifies the ability to collect data. And I think, as was referred to earlier, potentially detect change earlier and with greater magnitude than, say, a once-a-month clinic visit. And then I think the third thing that's really important for patients especially is that because these diseases are rare, patients are often being treated by physicians that are not experts in their disease and have potentially never even seen a patient like that before. And what we've heard from patients is that there's a bit of a divide between what physicians care about, which is, so real morbidity and mortality, right? Keeping patients out of the hospital, preventing crises, preventing death. And what patients care about, which is being able to play with their kids and go grocery shopping and do their finances and function. And the lack of objective measures to be able to monitor these kinds of day-to-day functions and start that dialogue with physicians is causing a bit of a, I would say, quite large gap in these dialogues. And so the third area where I think digital measures can really be impactful to rare disease patients is bridging this gap and helping patients advocate and empower themselves to have discussions with their physicians based on what they're experiencing and providing real data that supports the evidence-based mindset of HCPs.
Ankita, incredibly powerful remarks, not only sort of some of those sort of data and statistics that sort of, make me catch my breath a little bit, that we're as so advanced in the science as we are in so many ways, and yet there's still so much unmet patient need, but also those three sort of opportunities, I think, for everyone on this line today to actually lean into the promise of digital measures, to think about this pre-competitive work that we've done and to use that as a springboard to address that unmet need for sort of clinical decision-making, scientific decision-making, and patient centricity. That is a powerful call to action, and I appreciate you rounding us out. Ankita, Yuge, thank you for the discussion this morning. This was terrific. Thank you both for your leadership and the premium that you place on the patient voice every step of the way. We started with Laurie and this sort of bold vision for public health, and we sort of went through regulatory leadership, the intentionality that our foundation partners use to drive and advance the field, and then Ankita, thinking about those individual patients to round us out. This is the power and the promise of digital measurement of physical activity. This is the kind of top to bottom impact we can have on the public health and healthcare industries, as well as the lives of patients. So again, to all of the members of the team who worked so hard on this, thank you. And to all of you on the line, thank you for being here, and thank you for being willing to drive the adoption of these core measures. Candice, with that, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for our Fireside chatters for amazing chat and discussion. Now we're moving on to our rapid fire panel. To round out our discussion today, I'd like to bring some project members onto the screen. I have one question for each of you. It is a rapid fire panel. Before answering, feel free to share a little bit about your name and organization. So we'll start with Elena. My question for you is, how has your experience been working in this consortium, and what do you hope changes because of this work?
Thank you, Candice, first of all, for inviting me and asking me to share this experience. My name is Elena Izmailova. I'm CSO of Connexa Health, the company that provides scientific services for development and design of digital endpoints, as well as the data integration and the analysis platform. Today, I'm probably going to repeat what speakers have said already, but I would like to reiterate again that this is an excellent example of what can be achieved by pre-competitive collaboration, which extends way beyond the capabilities of a single organization, no matter how good and savvy scientifically this organization is. We had an outstanding multidisciplinary team of scientists with very diverse expertise, pharma, technology sector, academic institutions, disease foundations, you name it, essentially everyone who works in the digital medicine space as well as disease space. And I'm confident that this work lays foundations for future works assessing 6 vital signs. We are very much used to the first 5. It's time to bring the 6th one into the picture and make it an equal members, because bringing it all together on the same page by grounding us well into the terminology, into the concepts and how to measure concepts, we are basically bringing everyone on the same page and at the same time accelerating the progress. And it's possible to do only if we are going together. I anticipate the results of this project being adopted across the entire field of digital medicine. I foresee multiple applications. First of all, drug development, as Ankita just told us what opportunities it opens. Development and validation of new digital tools, because now we know where the gaps are and where the opportunities are. Enhancing and innovating care delivery. That's what Lori told us, how it is important to bring it to the patients and understanding it across multiple conditions, which is another innovative approach pursued by this team. Patients are at the core of this project. And the concepts that this project just shared with everyone are fully aligned with FDA guidance on patient-focusing drug development, as we incorporated patient voice into this 6 vital signs. I'm speaking today like Bray, as a researcher and also as a patient. I monitored my own physical activity when I received anti-cancer therapy. I was able to do it because of my professional affiliation and my knowledge of the field, because I knew that if I keep my daily step count above certain threshold, it would keep me outside of the hospital. What I hope this project will achieve, and I'm confident also that it will achieve, is to open these opportunities to everyone who needs medical attention, medical care, who will be a participant of a clinical trial, and all together, by leveraging what we learned today, we can make our future a better place.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you so much for highlighting the power of pre-competitive collaboration, this work, and the power of your own story. All right, next we have Joss.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. My question for you is, what are some gaps you've observed in the physical activity measurement field and the greatest opportunities for digital measurement?
Thank you very much. So my name's Joss Langford. I'm the Chief Technical Officer of Active Insights. We deliver activity, sleep, and lifestyle insight into clinical trials and public health research using our own professional wearables. I also have a fellowship at the University of Exeter, where we're a team which are strongly focused on developing measures, in-community measures of frailty and physical performance. So I think the first thing is this call, it celebrates the closing of a gap, I think. The measurement of physical activity has been really well established over many years in public health and sports science. And it's fantastic to see clinical research and clinical care picking up on that and closing that gap with the work that we've had presented today. That history has seen a transition of measurement towards standardized measures, towards the use of SI units where it can be, and the use of open algorithms. And I think that the work we're seeing presented today builds on that very, very strongly. I think there's still work to be done in terms of how we think about and recognize physical activity as just one perspective on physical behaviors, the physical behaviors that make up a full, rich daily life for a patient or a participant. And I think there are some opportunities in there as well. And I think it's very important not to get too caught up with digital measures as the main topic here. The real opportunity, as Bray mentioned earlier, is in the ability of remote monitoring to capture the everyday lived experience of our patients and our participants. Our growing ability to use high resolution, high granularity, continuous measurement is going to allow us to move beyond some of these ungainly measures of daily volume. They're useful, not necessarily as meaningful as we would like them to be to participants. Much of the richness of daily life comes from the variance over a day, within days, between days. So how do we build up? How do we acquire this physical activity over the day? What are those patterns? And I think that's a challenge and an opportunity for us going forward, and really a new frontier for us coming forward from this work, this great step forward, to think about how we're going to develop measures that really get down into that level of detail to help us represent and understand the lives of our patients and participants. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joss, and totally agree. And hopefully this work can provide a foundation so that we can move into the future as how you described. Next, we have Marissa. So my question for you is, you've been working on evidence of digital endpoints for some time now. Why was this project important to your ongoing work?
Thank you so much, Candace. It's great to be here. My name is Marissa Cruz. I'm the Chief Medical Officer of Empatica. Empatica is a company that creates a full stack solution for measurement of digital endpoints. So as you said, we've been interested in this space for quite some time. Over the last year or two, we've also invested significantly in our activity-based endpoints. Because we recognize, to echo sentiments that have been made by a number of the other panelists, that measurement of movement and physical activity enables much more nuanced and robust assessment of clinical outcomes. And that's the endpoint that they're most interested in advancing. I think that the prospect of better defining measures that highlight significant elements of how patients function and feel is a sentiment that has been championed both by industry, by regulators, and by the patient and clinician advocacy community. So I think it's a common interest, and I'm excited to see that there has been advancement in this space over the past couple of years. I also liked what Jen said about the value add of these kinds of pre-competitive collaborations for technology developers themselves. We're a technology developer that regularly brings digital endpoints through the FDA regulatory process and uses them in clinical trials. And I think when we have core collaborations that allow for us to align on a set of defined metrics, that reduces some of the noise in the conversations and allows for us to really focus on the aspects of digital endpoint creation that matter, right, around precision and accuracy, usability, and patient centricity. And so I think that these kinds of collaborations are ones that we get excited about, because I think it does allow us to come together and say, we have a focus on those endpoints that matter to patients, that matter to people working on development of therapeutics and diagnostics, and that matter to regulators. And now we can get to the meat of making sure that they work well, that they are usable, and that they're measuring what matters. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marissa. Next, I'd like to invite to the screen Jessalyn. From your perspective of a researcher or a data scientist, or from the perspective of a researcher or a data scientist, how can this work move the field forward related to digital measurement of physical activity?
Thanks so much, Candace. And thanks to the entire team for putting together these fantastic resources. My name is Jessalyn Dunn. I'm an assistant professor at Duke in biomedical engineering and biostatistics. I run the Big Ideas Lab here at Duke, and we also have several open source software platforms that are aimed at developing digital biomarkers, and that requires an entire community of contributors. And so one of the things that I think is really important about these core physical activity measures that we've developed is that it enables developing computable data. And that's one of the big challenges that we've faced in this physical activity measurement community, is that there are many different definitions for physical activity measures. There are many different ways to calculate those different definitions, and thus we end up with a lot of data that is not an apples to apples comparison. And so with these core digital measures, what we can do is actually clean up the data and put it in a structured format that enables us to apply things like machine learning. So we've seen in a lot of other fields, machine learning is making great strides. For example, everybody is now familiar with large language models and ChatGPT. And part of the reason for those successes is because the data is so structured. And what this methodology that we've developed here enables is structured data that can then be computed upon, and really impressive models can be developed. And that will push forward digital endpoints in clinical trials, the use of digital measures in clinical care, pushing them into the EHR in a useful way. And so I think overall, just being able to map this data into something structured is really a game changer.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jessalyn. Next, I'd like to invite Soo-Yoon Shin onto this screen.
Hi.
Hi, Soo-Yoon.
And
Of course.
the entire team for the fantastic collaboration. I'm Soo-Yoon Shin. I'm the clinical science lead for the digital biomarkers team at Verily. So we build sensor-based digital measures and platform to connect the digital measures and other data elements, and to bring patient-centric and clinically meaningful insights to clinical research and care. And our goal is really realizing the precision health with the entire platform and the measures.
Perfect. Thank you, Soo-Yoon.
Yeah.
So the question I have for you is, as we move towards more personalized care, how will this core measure set of physical activity, our ontologies, and our resources inform the way we understand and care for patients?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've known that physical activity is a very important aspect of one's health across many different therapeutic areas. So we've been building a comprehensive set of physical activity measures and work here on standardization. Core measures and ontologies will really guide and reinforce our development and evidence generation. And the work here, I think, is a very important starting point to better understand patient physical activity and functioning, because as many people iterated, the alignment on the core measures really came from patients' voice and clinician perspectives on what's meaningful to patients. So these measures, we can imagine that can be very important tool to aid important care decisions like timing of intervention or treatment choice and titration, dosing of the treatment. And of course, like basic evidence needs to be built, according to the V3 framework that I'm developed and really spread to the field. Like, for example, in the care setting, if patient wants to bring their own device and data, which they really want, they want to really share the data with clinicians. And those consumer wearable devices may have different granularity and algorithmic approaches that may not be really revealed in the public. So those kind of things needs to be considered in on-local validation and evidence of clinical validity too. And as Lori and Bray mentioned, that really to deliver the actionable insights for patients and clinicians, building the right platform with clinically meaningful understanding on the clinically meaningful differences and what would be the clinically meaningful aggregation of device output really mapped onto specific actions per therapeutic area and medical conditions would be very important. And those all need to be the part of clinical flow and as others mentioned in the beginning. But anyhow, this work really provides the critical foundation on core measures, ontologies, and really paved the way for the future development. So I'm really excited to incorporate this learning into our development to enable the full power of digital measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Sui, and thank you for highlighting the foundation and the patient research, and then the future applications for some of these core sets and digital measures of physical activity. Finally, I'd like to invite Jay up to this screen. Jay, thank you so much for being a part of this project. You have always been a fantastic advocate for digital innovation in clinical research. How will you use these resources internally and with your pharma partners?
Yeah, and thank you so much, Candace, for inviting me to this panel. My name is Jay Ren. I am a director of data science in the digital clinical measures team within translational medicine here at Merck. And here, all we care about is to use digital clinical measures to support our clinical pipeline, to move it faster, move it in a better way. And from a pharma perspective, facilitating clinical development and decision-making inside a clinical pipeline is the most important aspect of our work. And that actually, as Ankita and Elena mentioned, physical activity and it is very, very important for us in drug development because it is so close to patients' daily experience. It matters to patients, and it's critical it's critical across various therapeutic areas. It brings brand new ways to measure patient functioning, and I think a lot of us within the pharma space are very, very excited. It also brings a lot of challenges when we talk about physical activities. As I think Joss and Jesslyn has mentioned, there are many, many measures. People slice and dice the high density data in very different ways. There are all kinds of different concepts. Some of them may or may not be the most important aspects that patients care about. So to us to figure out what is really the measure that we need for drug development is very important. And a lot of times, as we discuss, digital measures to support our pipeline, a lot of times we get questions of, okay, so you get a lot of data, and what do you do with it? And ultimately, our clinical leads, our stakeholders really don't want us to deliver gigabytes or terabytes of data to their face. What they really need is the insight, is the measure that can really help the pipeline make decisions, right? So with that, I think the tools that were developed in this effort, the conceptual frameworks and also the measurement ontology really can help us jumpstart those conversations. And it provides a common ground for us to start with, for us to understand, okay, these are the measures that are actually meaningful. These are the measures that are actually what patients care about and are meaningful to them. And what are the measures that we can actually implement in clinical trials. I think having these tools is very, very important to ensure that we can deploy these tools consistently and ultimately comparably across different studies, different trials, and build up that evidence. So finally, I'd like to mention that this physical activity work stream is such a fantastic collaboration hosted by Diamond Data CC, and I am personally very excited about this trend of work with physical activity and also other endpoints. I think developing this type of core measures and conceptual frameworks across the field of digital health is really, really needed and very timely for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you so much for your participation, and thank you to all of our panelists and speakers today. truly the work that you've contributed to this project has been excellent, and it's been an honor working with all of you over the duration of this project. All right, so why don't we bring all the panelists back onto the screen, and while we facilitate that, please put in the chat any questions that you have. We'd like to open up the floor to at least one question. Okay. There was a question on how someone would that's working on validated endpoints on physical activity get in touch with the panelists interested in these endpoints. We can facilitate some introductions in a bit. Ankita is responding, but maybe I'll pose one question to our panelists today is, in the beginning, Alan mentioned our omni-therapeutic approach to developing these core measure set. What is the significance of a multi-therapeutic approach that we've taken to this work? And if anyone would like to comment on how to bring that forward. Maybe Jay or Suyun?
Yeah, I think physical activity was a great example that we can really take the omni-therapeutic approach. Like, unlike scratch, can be very specific to a certain disease area, physical activity matters across many, not all, disease conditions. So I really appreciated the approach that Dime took. And then future like ongoing effort to take even more input from such as like regulator to how to really generalize these core set of digital measures to be applicable to different areas.
Yeah, and thank you so much for this question. I think the resources that were developed in terms of conceptual frameworks and ontologies are developed in the fashion that it is therapeutic area agnostic, meaning that it is a starting point for our conversation. And practically in our conversation with specific therapeutic areas and specific pipeline compounds, this is used often as a starting point. We lay it out, we talk to the therapeutic area leads and understand what are your patient population, what is their specific need, what is the need of the pipeline, what is the goal of the compound, and then based on the set of core measures, is there something specific that we need to be measuring, that we need to be deploying in this patient population? And then starting from there, we can really, facilitate that discussion. Having this core set of measure can jumpstart that. It does not replace that specific therapeutic area specific conversation, but it really also helps us reduce the silo of starting all the way from scratch.
Absolutely. Thank you, Suyun and Jay. I really appreciate your comments on, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have a core set, and then we can take it forward, and everyone can validate at least this core measure set on their patient population and context of use. So we are nearing the end. In the last minute, I want to share some updates. But first, a huge final thank you to our speakers. Let me just set up this share screen. A final thank you to our speakers today and all of our project team members. Thank you for your excellent engagement in this project and your outsized leadership in the field. To our audience, thank you for joining today. We're excited to share the resources. If we can pop the link back in the chat so everyone ensures that you have it. Coming up, we have a virtual journal club, The Promise of Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning for Improving Clinical Outcomes, this Thursday, so be sure to sign up for that. And we have another exciting launch, our V3 Plus, an extension to the V3 framework to ensure user centricity and scalability of sensor-based digital health technologies. So be sure to sign up using that QR code, and we'll see you there February 27th. Again, thank you so much to everyone who participated in this project and our webinar today. Congratulations to the team.